It's time for the Everyman, where real man talk.
Let's go. Time to grind, get inside your mind. Yeah, we working overtime. That's the only way to climb. We gon' make it in our prime. Signing on the dotted line, cashing checks left and right. That's the way I'm living life.
Good evening and welcome to the Everyman Podcast. Tonight we have three very special guests. We have Mike, Andy and Tim, who are the founders of Three Dads Walking, which was founded from an incredible cause of horrible situations happening in each of their lives that they've then turned into something really positive, not only for themselves, but for young people all across the UK. How are you all doing tonight, gentlemen?
Yeah, good.
Okay, yeah. Tim's gone sideways on the screen.
Yeah, Tim's gone sideways.
Oh, he always does something different. So this is his. Yeah, that's what he's doing tonight.
That's what it's like in Norfolk.
Tim, your house hasn't rolled over, has it?
Oh,
We've lost him.
It's been a sinkhole.
So do you guys normally walk and Tim just like crawls on his side? Is that what usually happens?
We can talk about him now he's not listening, can't we? Yes, he does. Yeah,
he does.
I'm
I'm sure he'll come back.
He marches on purposefully, doesn't he?
Yeah. The thing is, with all our walking and everything, obviously, the circumstances of how we got there are tragic. But the bizarre thing about when we did walk, we did laugh as well. Yeah. And there's a very important part of it. Mainly myself, Andy and Tim laughed at each other, but we were regularly joined by other people with tragic stories as well. And in the end, you do, in the face of everything, it's part of life, isn't it? You do laugh. And Tim's still sideways, isn't he?
Oh, God. Well, this kind of sums it up, doesn't it? No, I can't tell you what he's messaging me, by the way.
Yeah, I think he must be on his phone if it's tilting, I think.
Yeah.
But
I've got to say, Tim's usually really good with tech, but he'll get there in the end. No, like Mike says, it's just been an odd few years. Odd, is that the right word? It's one that you wouldn't have believed could have happened in so many ways.
Yeah,
and certainly meeting these two was, in hindsight, it was impossible that the three of us could have met, but we did.
Yeah,
and here we are. We keep finding ourselves doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. Having done a lot of research, and actually, I came across you guys before we even started the podcast. Actually, so we started the podcast sort of start of this year, and hearing your stories and seeing some of the things that you had done was just a huge inspiration. And obviously we have lots of things we try and do around mental health, and you guys were actually a big part of the inspiration for why we've started this, and actually not just thinking about doing something, but actually doing something to make a difference. And I know we've had a little chat just before, but I did really want to say, like, the work you guys do and the amount of effort you do to really raise the awareness of, especially suicide and young suicide, is something that definitely shouldn't just be acknowledged as, that there's three blokes doing something pretty cool. It's, you guys are really making a difference. If me as a 30-year-old who's now a father of a 1-year-old, it makes me think, wow, I have to have much different conversations with my son, with him growing up, versus probably what my dad had with me growing up. Just maybe those check-in conversations and make sure he's actually okay, versus probably just feeling like he's just going to be all right because everyone is.
It's about all-round awareness, isn't it? Suicide is a difficult subject, but sadly, as we found out, it's a fact of life. But I was one of those parents where suicide would never, ever affect me or my family. And my youngest daughter, Beth, took her own life at 17, completely out of the blue. And if I'd been more aware, and if she'd been more aware of how to reach out and had that help-seeking behaviour, you know, she could well be here now. And all our daughters, you know, Beth, Emily, and Sophie, they all have different stories, you know. But at the end of the day, they were beautiful, loved daughters who've left, you know, such a wreckage behind them, you know, and such sadness and grief. You know, if we just had a few things that were different, and you're right as a parent, you know, you've got a young child there, and you know, you couldn't love them more, you know, but having that awareness to keep them safe and to realize that, you know, if they had more awareness as they grew up, knowing how, you know, it could well save their lives.
Yeah, I've got to say, it's really interesting what you say, Lewis. That it's you know, one of the things that it's always reassuring, I think, from our perspective, to hear some kind of feedback that says that our kind of messages of hope are getting heard, that people are getting to understand, and listening to and hearing what we're saying. Because the stuff that we're saying is nothing new or unusual. It's just that it feels like we accidentally have created a platform. It really was by accident, you know. It really was just you'd set up for a walk and raise a bit of money for Papyrus, Prevention of Young Suicide. So what we've actually done is completely accidental, but it feels like the time was right for that message to be heard. Whether that's just off the back of the pandemic and a lot of focus on mental health issues, or because it's just three blokes being very open about what we were feeling, three older blokes as well. It just seems to have struck a chord. So actually hearing you say that it encourages you to think about you as a parent, but then you lads and the way you actually come together to try and create something positive is that's fantastic. Good to hear.
Yeah. Do you not think as well that you know, the three of us aren't stereotypical men who don't talk? You know, we've always talked. In fact, we always say you can't shut us up. But it's been a very important part of me getting to where I am today and still being here myself. Because, you know, let's not underestimate the effect of losing, you know, a daughter to suicide has. You know, it puts you in such a dark place, you know, but being able to talk about it is you know, it's a huge thing.
It's incredible.
You know, and it helps people process it. Yes, it is. Yes. So, you know, sometimes you find it's hard to actually shut us up, but, you know, I'd say, that's it, isn't it? You know, but I'd say to anyone, you know, men, you know, of your age, you know, there is the macho, you know, exterior, you know, but never be afraid to talk, because you will find you are not alone.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Actually, can you hear us, Tim? Are you back with us?
I'm back now, I think. Can you hear?
That's right. We're going to get the band back together. Oh, God. No, it's that feeling of...
It's good. It's good.
Yeah, it was really quite eye-opening. Like Mike said earlier on, you know, suicide's something that happens to other people's families, and it's very sad when it happens. But it's just, you know, life. You go on, don't you? You send a letter, send your condolences or whatever, but crack on until it lands in your life, when it just shatters everything and everything around you. And for what the various reasons, we've come together and realised that we were accidentally seeing the overview of what's happening in the country. You know, suicide being the biggest killer under 35s in the UK, over 6,000 people a year taking lives. 200 school-aged children dying by suicide, and all these figures are massively understated, because we've also learned that there's so many suicides that go down the coroner's record as accidental death or misadventure or narrative verdict. So we know these numbers are hugely underestimated. But then when we started talking about it, it just felt like the time was right for that to be heard. We accidentally got the overview, and as I said earlier, we'd accidentally created a platform, but then suddenly people wanted to listen, and so from our point of view, we keep shouting.
Yeah, And you are doing an incredible job. I think, Mike, you just touched upon something there around how it affected your mental health, and I'm sure it affected all of your mental health. And one, it's every parent's worst nightmare. Even when I even allow my brain to somehow go into that idea to have this conversation, it honestly, I feel sick even saying those sorts of words. But if you don't mind talking about a little bit around what that situation was like for you, but not too much, but more importantly, how the work you're doing has helped you guys to probably not accept it, or maybe accept it, and how you're able to move forward with your life, and how the work you've done together has enabled you to do that.
Who's going to start? Yeah, well, as I said before, it is absolutely brutal. It nearly finished me off. It sent me to a suicidal place, and it was only because of Beth. The whole world changes colour. Well, it just goes into black and white. Nothing, as Andy always says, it's like you forget how to breathe. Literally, you do. And you go from a father, well, I felt as I went from a father into nothing. Maybe a strong firefighter, into I was nothing. I didn't want to be here. I couldn't even converse with my own family. They were lost in their own grief. It's absolutely horrible. But but meeting these two, we can go into the full story. But I met Tim first. Started talking to Tim because we were two of our surviving daughters made contact, and then a little later on, I met Andy's son, and basically through Andy's son Gregor, I met Andy. But it's so important to realise you're not the only one. There's other people suffering like you. And when you start talking about it and together, it makes you stronger. And we all realised what we all wanted. We're all very proactive people. And, the basic thing was we've got to get off our arses and do something. And not do something because of our age, our physical our physical state. It was walking. It was never going to be running. But basically,
prowess is a great word.
That's it. We had a plan that where we were going. We were going the first walk between all our homes, in Cumbria, in Manchester, and out to Norfolk, and that was about it. We just wanted to illustrate that suicide was the biggest killer in the UK, and off we went, and there it unfolded.
And I think, sorry, I should not get cut off now. Hopefully, I've got a connection. Hopefully, you can hear me. Hey. But I think, your point about kind of getting through this. I know when Em died, I wasn't trained. I haven't got a clue how to cope with it. I've been in some really kind of dodgy situations in my kind of work life, and I'd always been trained for that. But this was way beyond anything I'd ever had to deal with. I didn't know how to deal with it. And we say it a lot to people, but it's kind of help-seeking behaviour that we all kind of all of us knew we couldn't do this on our own, and that's definitely what I did. And I just reached out for anyone and anything that would help me. And Mike was one of those. And the value, I spoke to Mike, who was dead on a month after Emma died, so it's about 3 weeks after Beth had died. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I just knew that I'd got another dad there that was going through something very similar to me. And the power of that peer support, that the support I got from Mike, and I think he got from me, 24/7, we agreed we'd talk to each other whenever we needed to, day or night. However rubbish we felt, we'd pick up the phone. And that peer support, to me, you could have a therapist that will tell you X, Y, and Z, but that therapist is not living with what you're living with at the moment. And Mike pretty much was. And that, to me, was massively powerful. Mike got it warts and all from me, and I got it warts and all from Mike about how bad we were feeling. And then there was I reached out. I was very open at work about how I needed support, and I started to look ahead to people that were in a very similar situation to me, but were a bit
dropping off. Come back.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you too.
Yeah, I can hear you too.
Yeah, so I started to reach out to people that are at works they help. And basically I got connected with a guy who was about 7 years down the line, who'd lost his son. And he'd set up a brilliant charity. It's called the Royal Bear Force. But he gave me something to aim for. And then obviously met Andy, who was kind of 14 months ahead. And meeting people who are in a very similar situation, maybe a little bit further down the line, makes you realize that there is a way of getting to that point a little bit further down the line. And that's incredibly powerful, or was for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's that feeling of you don't know how to live. You don't know how to live. Those first few days just I don't know. It's even looking back now, it's hard to grasp how impossible it was to get through a day. But it was. But one of the things that we found because of what we've done, we've met, I couldn't tell you, loads and loads and loads of other suicide bereaved parents over this last couple of years. And you can see the conversations that they have with us help. You know, there's funny enough, I was just thinking the other day about Martin, the chap we met when we walked across Forster Bowl, and
I was getting in contact with him.
Yeah, and he was he'd lost his daughter about 3 weeks before. And he joined us on the start of that day, and his idea was just to talk to some people he'd seen survive, knew had survived, to work out how the hell he could do it. And by the time we left him that evening, he was almost a different person. Obviously his loss hadn't changed and his grief hadn't changed, but I think that feeling of hope that you can actually go on somehow, he realised that you can. And we had a right good laugh with him as well. You know, we had a brilliant day. And we actually stayed with him on the second walk we did. We actually stayed with him and his wife as we came through Lancashire. But as Tim was saying, that feeling of talking to people who understand because they're living it, is that the realisation that it is happening to other people and other people have survived and are getting through and are doing something positive. But also, like with us, that's that feeling of being able to make a difference farther upstream as well is driving us on. Because if the power of talking that helps you with grief, the power of talking can also help save lives and get people talking about suicide and suicide prevention. So that's the one of the critical lessons that we've learned, is that talking is the most powerful thing we can do.
I think you raised, when you were asked the question as well, you were talking about how do you move forward, and I think that is a really powerful statement. Moving forward is exactly what you do after you've been through something like this or any crisis in your life. You move forward. I've heard people say before, oh, you move on with your life. Well, no, you'll never move on, because whatever you've done, we've lost our daughters, but whatever crisis you've been in your life, you'll carry that with you. And moving forward is the correct terminology, because you'll grow around that. If you can get through what you're dealing with at the moment, you'll move forward. And whatever you're dealing with, the loss of our daughters, for us, will made us stronger. We're carrying that. So we definitely haven't moved on from losing our daughters. We'll never move on from losing our daughters, but we will move forward.
It's just so courageous, boys. It's just hearing you talk and the ways of talking, the ways of helping others, and the fact that you are willing to be vulnerable with each other. Like you were saying there, night or day, text me, call me, be available. And that is something that, paid professionals don't do. People do this try to do that for a living, and they don't offer that level of support. So the fact that you have come through such grief and such tragedy, and you have managed to stay strong, and I totally get where you come from. Life you'll never ever move on from this, you know what I mean? But what you can do is you can help prevent it moving forward, and you can put it in the right people's eyes and put it at the forefront of conversation. We spoke before this, off air, and Lewis was sharing a little bit about his journey as well, and Lewis has been sharing about his thoughts in the past and in such a dark place. I think the fact that he started talking to us, not as necessarily in such a way as you guys spoke, but the fact that he was willing to open up and we can get this podcast going and have such amazing guests like you who share your journey, it's a step in the direction. So I take my hat off to you guys, because it's so brave that he's went through that, and he's keep working every day and keep fighting.
Yeah,
isn't that the most powerful thing though? Lewis talking about where he's been. Well, those are the most powerful stories we hear from people who have struggled, been in crisis, sometimes attempted to take their own lives, yet now they're living a different life, a life they want to. It doesn't mean every day's easy, but they've got reasons to live. They want to live, and that's the hope, and that's what we want to get through to people as well. That sometimes this despair, many different reasons, but often despair is temporary. You go on, you get to the other side of it, and life's full of twists and turns. It's so yeah, it is a long road, but
but also it's interesting to use words like, people often do use words like courageous or being brave. I've got to say, it doesn't feel like that.
Doesn't it?
Is it? Because
no.
It was initially it was very much the feeling that you got to do something, and I remember the day we found we were told that Sophie had died. Having the conversation with my wife Fee and our son Gregor, and one of the things that we said that day was, we've got to make something positive out of this mess. Obviously, we had no idea what it could be. I had no idea what it could be, but it was a feeling that it was such a shitty place in our lives. Christ Almighty, we must be able to do something with this that helps other people. But that's not bravery or courage. It's just kind of, I don't know, it's that a desire to stop other families coming down the same route.
Yeah.
And then by a series of quirks of fate or accident, we started. As Tim said, we lost Sophie about 14 months before Beth and Em died. And I accidentally, I was introduced to these guys, Papyrus, by a friend, and found out they were fantastic people, and did some fundraising, which kind of took on a bit of a life of its own in our part of the world. And then when the three of us got together, this three dads walking, it was Mike's idea, it's all his fault. That idea of showing that it could happen to any family anywhere really did take on a life of its own. And once we started being heard, it's not courage or bravery that drives us. It's the realization that it makes a difference. Then the feedback that we get all the time from all over, either through Papyrus and the feedback they get, or people contacting us directly, is so positive that we're talking about the right things, and people have been pleased to see the three of us, because it's allowed them to have conversations with their children, or encouraged to have conversations to check in with their children. And in some cases, people have said, by us introducing them to Papyrus, they've reached out via the Hopeline 24/7 and asked for help, and lives have been saved. So we've kind of got ourselves into a position that it's not to do with courage or bravery. It's because we have made a difference. We realize.
Don't think we always get on.
Who said that?
That's mates, though, isn't it?
We're very different, but yeah, we are mates, and we're in contact with each other every bloody day as well. Messages.
I'm not talking to you every day.
Yeah. Not him again. No. But it's a bizarre thing, but it feels almost like fate. I don't know how we got here. The world just, it just taken on a different sort of view, to be quite honest. And it's quite bizarre in many ways.
I think everything you guys have just said there is probably where Ethan hasn't opened up yet, and it's up to Ethan whether he wants to talk about, I suppose, his journey and stuff. But it's probably why we are where we are today and why we're having this conversation. So I think, yeah, having something happen in your life, and this is as much the conversation we're having to the audience here, people who may be struggling. I went through the situation of I have kind of two choices. It can either break me, or I can make this situation something better than it is. It doesn't change the fact that that was a really shit situation that I went through, and I really did struggle, and I can't change that at all. But what I can then change is the next actions that I take and the things that I try and do, and probably quite similar to you guys in terms of trying to help other people. Naturally helps me. It's not like I don't give away any of my struggles by helping others, but it helps me understand some of my struggles by at least speaking to other people, understanding what other people are going through. Because I think a lot of grief or depression, anxiety, stress, the things that people generally struggle with, a lot of the problem is you're battling your own mind's voice. So your own mind's voice plays tricks on you because it'll tell you that you're not good enough, or you can't do this, or it's too hard and it's not worth it, and why. And actually just being able to vocalize that with other people, even just by listening to someone else, for me, it seems to quieten down the noise, because I then don't feel like I'm the worst person in the world. By hearing someone else going through it, I understand maybe myself a little bit more. And I think that's something that's really powerful. You might not get loads out of, or you might not be able to help loads of people in the situation that you're currently in, and that's to anyone listening. But actually, you might really be able to help yourself just by listening, and maybe help take away some of that stress and that buildup of pressure in your head. Because actually, like you say, the suicidal thoughts are only there for split seconds of real intense stress, anxiety, or things like that, where it all almost boils over. I describe it like boiling the water in a pan. There's that few seconds where it boils over, and then the water's still bubbling away, but it's a lot calmer once you turn the temperature down. And I think just understanding and recognizing moments when you're about to boil over, and how do you create coping strategies and ways to deal with that intense moment, to not make any decisions that you will either regret or you might not be here to regret. So just recognizing that within yourself, it's definitely something that, again, I've gone to therapy and I've tried to speak to lots of people, and I've done lots of research on and self-discovery, and I hate wishy-washy words like that, but moments like that to probably try and understand me, to help me live a better life in the future. So everything you guys have just said there absolutely resonates from my experience as someone who thought about it pretty seriously, and then is now in a situation where I don't have any of those thoughts anymore. So and that makes me almost feel at peace and calm. One thing I did really want to ask you guys around, and we've had previous guests on talk around what COVID did to young people, in the sense of it was a real pressure moment, and the repercussions today that we're seeing from COVID in terms of young people maybe not being able to communicate effectively because they've been in situations where they weren't able to communicate because they were isolated, or they were put in situations where they were really made to feel alone. I'd be really keen to understand your thoughts. If there's a parent listening today, and they're listening to this, and they have slight concerns around what COVID did to or the impact COVID had on their child, and they're not sure how to deal with that today, and it's still following on, is there anything that parents could be doing to help their child almost come back out in a more positive way?
Well, lockdown had a devastating effect on myself and Tim, because we lost Emily and Beth in the first week of lockdown. they were some of the first victims to fall through mental health issues in lockdown, because everything they heard, I think, scared them. All their coping mechanisms were gone, all their social lives were gone, going out, going to the gym, all sorts of things were all of a sudden gone. They were the first victims. But we spend a lot of time at the moment talking to teachers, schools, a lot of people around education. Oh, certainly, there's a mental health crisis that is only getting bigger, and you can pinpoint the lockdown and all the rest of it for being one of the factors, and it's only one of the factors. We've got other factors there, like basically social media, the internet and things like that. There's a crisis through our young people. This is your talking about being able to know how to cope and all the rest of it. Well, we believe, and this is why we've got we ran our petition to introduce suicide prevention as a compulsory subject in the RSHE curriculum in schools, because we believe we've got to get right upstream of this and start when kids are young, talking about emotions, encouraging help-seeking behaviours, and introducing certainly suicide prevention as a compulsory subject, across all schools. So that's where we'll start. So, yeah, messages to any parents at the moment, I think, is make yourself aware. Make yourself aware of suicide prevention, suicide awareness, and basically, how to recognize the signs in your young people.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. We've discussed this before, actually, how education is just absolutely the key. In you almost don't know what you don't know. So if someone doesn't know how they feel and they only feel overwhelmed, or a parent thinks that their child might be just having being a teenager, and that just means that they are spending more time in their bedroom or whatever that might be. I think identifying and understanding what the signs could be, as you say, is a big part. So when you talk around wanting to get it into the curriculum, and I've seen lots of the work you guys have done with obviously getting that to Westminster. I've seen you've met with the Education Secretary, and I'd be really keen to understand all of that. I used to work in education, so massively interested in some of the work you guys have done around that. But do you think there's almost something as well that needs to happen for parents to understand and identify that? Because can we trust children to be wise enough to understand that themselves?
Remember that there is, but you remember these children will become parents one day, and if we've invested in them at school, they should carry some of these skills into their later life. There'll be some, adult parents, and they'll have these skills before.
I think hopefully you can hear me now after my little IT stuff. But we watched Cumbrian charity. That's good for me. A Cumbrian charity called Every Life Matters deliver some suicide prevention training to 11 and 12-year-olds and 15 and 16-year-olds. And that was absolute eye-opener for me. The biggest thing that I took away from that, I think there's about 50 kids in total. Not one parent said they had to get their parents' permission to do it. Not one parent said no, they didn't want it. So that's the parents buying in. What it meant was these specialists that got brought into school were addressing a subject that the parents felt ill-equipped to deal with. And it was all very age appropriate. It was all very gentle. It was all about just what you were saying a minute ago about handling that time when you feel depressed, as if you don't want to be anymore, telling people that it won't last forever, and telling the young people, look, when you're in a good place, let's put some strategies in place so that when you hit that wall, let's not wait till you hit that brick wall and that I don't want to be here anymore before you actually decide what, you've got that coping strategy in place when you're in a good place. And the simple fact is we train our young people to deal with so many of the risks in their lives, such as driving, drugs, knife crime, sex education, all this lot, but we don't mention the S word to them, and that doesn't make any sense to me.
So one of the things that at the heart of what we we ended up talking about the school curriculum. What you need to realise is we aren't experts. We're not experts in education, and we're certainly not experts in suicide prevention. We've just been thrown into this world by accident. But what actually happened on the first walk, because we met so many suicide bereaved parents every day, we were having these conversations that many of them were similar. Lots of conversations about the suicide and running into suicides were all different. The stories were all different, but the conversation kind of led into a place where we ended up talking. Many parents said didn't see it coming. We had no idea that suicide was a big killer. Then suddenly this thing landed in their lives and exploded their lives. And it was only after they lost their children that they found papyrus. It was only when they found papyrus, they found that suicide is the biggest killer of under 35s. And they were all saying, well, why didn't anybody tell us? Why didn't anybody tell our children that this is the biggest risk? And so it was off the back of that first walk and those multiple conversations with why is nobody talking about this? It prompted us to have a look at the curriculum when we got back from that first walk, which makes really interesting reading. I've got to say, the pastoral stuff in the school curriculum that's now under the RSHE label is fantastic. And I was at school in the 1960s, in fact. Now I think about it, 60s and 70s. And the school curriculum didn't contain anything. Mental health was not a thing, it just wasn't a thing. And it's quite interesting looking back, the number of people I went to school with who have taken their own lives. And it is, and they were never given the chance to help themselves. But the curriculum as it stands, or as it stood, was pretty good. Lots of discussions about resilience and mental health issues, and mental health and well-being and being active for positive mental health and all that kind of stuff. Really good. But the one thing it didn't say was you had to talk about suicide prevention. And as Tim said, if this is the biggest risk in our young people's lives, logically, it would suggest you have to talk about it. Not talking about it is stupid. And so it was actually quite easy for us to get our sights set on the government and the Department for Education in particular to say, if this is the biggest risk, why aren't we talking about it? Because it's there, it's literally there in black and white. Here's the curriculum, and it says, it actually says suicide prevention. You can talk about it, but only to older pupils. So it proves that it's not compulsory, and it avoids talking to younger children about the biggest issue. And we've met parents of 11-year-olds have taken their lives. You've come across families of 8-year-olds that have taken their own lives. So when we need to start doing something really early, but the fact that it's an easy target doesn't mean that's the only target, because you're right that it's not the school should do this and parents should do this. Society should do it, because if this is the biggest killer of our young people, we as a society need to pull our heads out of the sand and actually realize that we need to talk about this risk and then actively do something about it, because not doing it is completely stupid. And so we've got an easy target in the government and a few lines in the school curriculum, but that's not the real target. The real target is all of us.
It's like a societal change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's quite simple. 3 blokes trying to change society. Aren't we good?
Yeah, that's it. Maybe jumping ahead here, but I see it as a huge shift. We must invest more in our young people, as in we have such a focus on their academic qualifications, but we need to balance it now with life skills. And that includes suicide prevention. It includes a lot of other things, like how to deal with social media, the internet, bullying. Because I think the pressures are coming in at all different angles. And basically, I see as our young people, our kids really aren't having the fun they used to have. Life's very complicated for them, and they're carrying these problems obviously into adulthood as well. So I really think they need a shift. I mean, this is proven, I think, with what's going on at universities at the moment. You've got, young people there with a ruck of academic qualifications, but not even the life skills to keep themselves happy and safe. You know, we need things to change.
He's doing, and that's the thing. From what you're saying there, lads, I mean, it sounds very reactive rather than very proactive. That's what it is, and especially in the schools. And you know, I didn't go to school in the 60s. Unfortunately, it was the early 2000s. Put that one in. Just leave that one in.
Hey, I tell you, it wasn't all bloody roses. I tell you, the corporal punishment still existed.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. But I went to school in the 2000s, and you know, it's well documented through our podcast that I've struggled with my weight, and I was bullied heavily at school, and you know, I would be lying if I saying I didn't have those thoughts, you know, and it takes you to dark places. And even when I was at school, it was a very taboo subject, you know. Even sex education was a taboo subject, but you know, obviously, I highly doubt that's going to kill anyone or cause any problems. But the fact that suicide prevention, mental health, you know, it's something that is very much under the carpet. And it goes back to the old saying that Lewis mentioned, I believe, off camera, where you have to give this macho approach, and if you go to another male friend and say, you know, I'm really struggling, they'll say, well, be a man's man or something like that. And you know, or a woman, you know, if they go and speak to another woman colleague or woman friend, you know, it's not just men that are affected. But the thing is, it needs to change, and people's attitudes need to change, because such destruction that's been left behind. Luckily, you guys have been able to turn such tragedy and really help others, but unfortunately, other people aren't as fortunate and aren't as, I say this word, brave and courageous to do such a thing. And it does cause a lot of problems, you know. And I've lost a friend, Connor. Lewis knew him as well. He was in his 20s and he took his own life, and that was a real turning point for me. And I know this is going to sound selfish, but going to his funeral and seeing his family, his mum, you know, his friends, you know, myself, we all sort of shed a tear and we were distraught. And that really changed my aspect on things, because I thought, I don't have the strength to do it, and I don't have the strength to leave such destruction behind and cause such heartbreak. And I know it sounds selfish, and I do apologise, but you know, ever since then, I've just been sort of too much of a coward to do any actions of that manner, because I just, it's something I couldn't do, you know. But you know, the fact that you guys are getting out there doing such amazing work, and like Lewis said, he's actually trying to be proactive about this, and it's something that needs to be put in the curriculum. It has to be, because it's just as important as, you know, if we're doing history at school and you're looking at the Battle of Hastings or you're looking at the Roman Emperor, it's all well and good looking at the past, but who's showing you the future? You know, who's showing you the way forward? So, and that's my thoughts on the matter. You know what I mean?
Thanks for that, Ethan. I think what really hits me is we're moving to an age now, Mike, you touched upon it, where kids are getting out less and less. So they're having less actual physical social interaction. Everything's through social media. There's all these false expectations that they have to be perfect. They have to look a certain way. They have to be a millionaire by probably 10 now. Like, it's all these like crazy, hard to reach things. So we're setting up our kids, our young adults fail with all these false expectations all of the time, but there's nothing around them to equip them with. That's not real life. You don't have to hit those. You don't have to be that person. Like, the older you get, it's weird, isn't it? You value material things way less. You value your time way more. You value the relationships you have with people way more. But when you're younger, you just want to be cool. You want to be popular. You just want to have the latest thing. And the more we can, I wish I knew what I knew now when I was 15 or 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, because then I wouldn't have wasted so much time and probably been so unhappy chasing things that for that buzz or to look cool versus the things that probably made me actually happy. And as you get older, you need to learn that.
Yeah, I think social media has a lot to answer for. I think it's producing a very entitled society, as in our young people want things now, and if they can't have it now, and this isn't everyone, this is an overview, but I think this is the way they're going. They want it now. But you remember our young people as well, they have their mobile devices 24/7, don't they? You know, I mean, would you really send your child up to their bedroom with pornography, with instructions of how to take their own lives or how to self-harm and lots of other foul things? Well, that is basically what they're doing. They're going up to their bedroom with their mobile device that is a portal to all these terrible places. You know, that there needs to be control on it. The online safety bill's been up and running recently. I know they've tried to water that down. But when we talk about suicidal thoughts and things, if we don't teach our young people in school, they will basically search it and it will take them to these very dark places. You know, it has a lot to answer for.
But in the pandemic over the last 2020 to 2022, we told our kids that everything was online. That's how they were educated. If anyone, my surviving kids had to have therapy afterwards. That was all provided online. So we're the generation, if you like, us lot have forced our kids to go onto it for education, and now we're saying to them, "Oh, we don't want you to be on it," which doesn't make sense to them, and that's the whole world out there. So a lot of the fault, especially since the pandemic, you know, there's been been a 77% increase in referrals to child and adolescent mental health services since the start of the pandemic. So it's brutal, and we've overwhelmed the services, and that's why, you know, getting in early and doing the prevention stuff is so important.
One of the things you said there, Lewis, I think is really interesting, which is a thought. It shows that you're growing up, I have to say. It's that I wish I knew then what I know now.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you this, that as you get older, you'll keep having that thought. When you're in your 50s, you'll think, "Oh, I wish I knew that when I was 30."
Do you want to just tell me the answers now, then?
No,
and then I can
work it out for yourself, mate.
But that is also part of it, isn't it? You need to probably have the bad times to know what is the good times. And
and everybody goes through something different. You know, we all learn things in different ways. But I think you're right. You know, in the background at the moment, because of the incessant positivity you get on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, you know, people just living these fantastic, perfect lives. It sets a standard against which nobody's perfect, which is just crap. And so I think what we keep coming back to with certainly with education in schools, but also the understanding that parents have got to be able to show young people that's the false bit, and equip folk with understanding that things aren't going to be perfect all the time, and then building some understanding and knowledge that allows you to get through those challenging and difficult times. You know, our conversations with the Department for Education have been really interesting, which is very much ongoing at the moment, because you can see over this last certainly 15 or 20 years, the DFE have been so focused on academic standards, and you know, the schools have become factories to produce people who pass exams and get and achieve highly in exams. And it's got so far off track in terms of producing rounded human beings. And we'll see how far down this conversation we end up going, because we've accidentally got involved with all kinds of academics and educationalists. And we, as I said before, you know, we're not experts, but we seem to be allowing a space in which the experts might be able to make a difference. So we'll keep going, but that change of view, change of focus has to be made.
Yeah, when you talk about that, obviously lots of change. I think we're all on that same page that lots of change has to come through education. So you've met some of the top people. You've met the education minister, for example. You've went to Westminster. Is there change happening? Is there sign of change happening? Is there actually any hard commitment that something could happen? And if not, what can we all do to help drive that?
Well, we're hoping when rather than will it.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
go on, Tim.
Yeah, so we met the minister. She was the minister then, Gillian Keegan, in health and social care, and she got suicide prevention in her portfolio. And she said it's really, really hard to get into education. And guess what? She's the Secretary of State now for Education, and we've met her 3 times. And it's been very positive, the meetings. We've also, with the Prime Minister in the back garden of Number 10, massively positive meeting. And the debate that we had in Westminster, where we had MPs from across the House, all supporting what we're saying, that we need to educate our children in suicide prevention. Nobody is giving us a good reason why we shouldn't be doing it at the moment. And it seems we've got support. It's quite sad, really, but the one thing that unites politicians is suicide prevention. And to have found that, and to have found everyone pulling in the same direction is quite a revelation to us, or to me especially. I hadn't realised they'd all work together like that. So it feels like we're going in the right direction. What we need to do now is we've got all the experts around the table, and the experts we've got from charities, from the education sector and academia, which is the most important thing, because it's a very dangerous thing for the government to do, to be kind of going, right, we're going to teach suicide prevention. And if it's done in the wrong way, that could be, detrimental. That could cost people their lives. So the government, quite rightly, want hard facts and want that support from the experts. So the experts that we've got around the table, it's up to them now to convince the government that we can do this safely, and we can do this in a controlled, age-appropriate manner. So it feels like we've been given an absolute golden opportunity to make such a difference. And it's now just down to those experts to convince the government that, this is the right thing to do, and we can do it safely.
And where we are is these meetings are happening now. So we're actually down at Westminster next week at one of them, but they're having a series of meetings with all kinds of people, whether it be from education, from academic research, from suicide prevention charities. So these meetings are just starting to happen now, with a report to be written over the summer, and the recommendations off the back of that report to be delivered back to the Department for Education, and Gillian Keegan in particular, come this autumn, September time. And once we get to that place, if everything still lines up, the Department for Education can make the change internally. It doesn't have to go before Parliament. There doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Nothing needs to be voted on, because it's a curriculum issue. That's within the gift of the DFE itself. So they can rewrite the curriculum. So it does feel like we've got all the right people in all the right places.
Good.
It's just a question of making sure they all keep talking, and the dominoes start to fall in the right direction.
As we say, sort of that we can't do nothing in this situation, but we have to be proactive in it. Letting it carry on. There's figures out there that show that child suicide has risen over the last 10 years, and that is absolutely unacceptable. And I think it's only going to get worse with the pressures that our young people are under. But there is always the risk. You can't teach suicide. Well, we're not teaching. We don't want suicide taught. We want suicide prevention taught, and that is hugely important.
You don't teach kids how to start fires, do you? You don't teach kids how to be. You teach them fire prevention. You teach them, how to shut fire doors and stuff. And that's all we're saying is teach prevention. Let's not wait for everyone to be absolutely overwhelmed.
Yeah. So if we get to a place where it doesn't go in, if suicide prevention isn't added to the school curriculum, we'll keep asking the same question. We might have to go through the walk
loudly, very loudly.
But imagine that, if it doesn't go in, okay. So we all know that suicide is the biggest killer of young people in the country. What are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Because doing nothing is, as Mike said, doing nothing is not an option. if this is the biggest risk to our young people's lives, what are you doing about it?
You think of how much effort we put into road safety. That's the one that I keep coming back to. We lose tragically about 1,500 people on the roads every year. Yet we have all the speed limits, all the car safety systems, police out with speed cameras everywhere. So much effort is put into road safety, and we lose 1,500. Tragically lose 1,500 people a year on the roads. And all we're saying is, if we lose at least 4 times that amount by suicide, let's put a similar amount of effort into suicide prevention. It's as simple as that. The numbers just don't stack up at the moment.
No, I mean, you lose that one person, and they say 135 people are affected by that one suicide. It's like Beth, and I'm sure, Sophie and Emily, it was far more than that, and these people are more likely to actually struggle themselves, and even they're more likely, say 80 to 300% more likely to take their own lives. It's the knock-on effect. It's absolutely brutal.
Exactly. And the thing is, lads, as well, like, I heard something not long ago, and the budget in education in the UK is the same budget to actually fix potholes in the UK. Now, that could be something that needs to be addressed. I don't know how accurate that is, but I did hear that from a teacher. And that's something that, when you guys are trying to put your point across, is the funds there? Now, there may have to be subjects taken out, unnecessary subjects that are there, that we can change, and we can try and build something more proactive. But it's just shocking to hear even those numbers, and when you guys are working effortlessly and tirelessly to get this put across. And like you were saying, there should be no excuse for this not to go in. There's just no excuse, and I don't know how you can justify it.
If something else, it's just a risk assessment, isn't it? Simple as that. If something else needs to drop out of the RSHE curriculum, then it needs to drop out of the RSHE curriculum. Because if this is the biggest risk to our young people, we need to do something to try and prevent it. Simple, absolutely. It's just so simple. And the other tragedy, absolute tragedy, is that I hear that when a young person has taken their own life at a school, it's at that point the school often calls in a suicide prevention charity to deliver suicide prevention material to the other pupils. Well, imagine if they delivered that suicide prevention training before that young person had taken it. We're doing everything after the horse has bolted. It's just a no-brainer.
It almost seems like, where we talk about social media and we talk about the fact that our kids or young people today, and a lot of people, to be fair, are spending so much time on Instagram, TikTok, is these 30-second fast videos, and we've got these influencers pumping out all the shit that they pump out that is just nothing, fake life. For it to really land, the sad thing is you probably need to go through that community, not just the curriculum. That almost needs to be the culture within the UK. Needs to be, instead of buying the latest gadget thing, whatever, then you actually need to have these people have some sort of a conscience and say, actually, I may have 1 million followers, I may look like I'm living this life, but actually I get all these hateful messages all the time and it's really hurtful. This isn't actually my real life. I put this out for brands because they pay me money, but actually my real life looks like this, and I don't actually look like this. I'm going to take the filter off. I actually look like this as well. Yeah, like I have spots too. I am bald. Like all those sorts of things. Like I'm not this perfect person. But I feel there's got to be an element of
honesty and kindness. Yeah,
honesty, exactly. But to really change the culture, sadly, yes, the school's going to play a huge part. I absolutely see that, to help as they grow up. But there's almost going to have to be a culture change within the social media platforms, because that's where people are spending their time. And in terms of celebrities who have probably experienced things, just statistically, there'll be lots of celebrities out there who've been impacted by it, need to start talking about it in a way to help the conversation flow as well. It almost needs to be cool to talk about your mental health versus actually we all have to be perfect to look good on an app.
Well, it did that. I mean, I could say that is changing, and it is.
Yeah.
You know, people are much more open. Certainly on the media, you hear and see so much more of people being very open about their experiences. I think we'll come back to the societal change, that realization that we all need, it's all our responsibility, the attitudes that we create. But it is challenging. It's challenging because people do get stuck in strange places at times, and they believe it's very easy to believe that your life isn't up to scratch when you try and compare it to the stuff that's out there. And quite often you end up in places where even if the positive messages are being put out, you're not prepared to listen to them. Which is, again, one of the reasons why we want to get these understandings and strategies put in place, just so it's people realise it is actually quite normal. You know, if 1 in 5 of us are going to have stuff from suicidal thoughts in their lives, it kind of makes sense to equip all of us to have some kind of technique to get through those really dark periods. But you're right. I mean, it's our point in everything at the school curriculum is really simple, but the answer is much more complicated. But if you've got a platform and we can shout about it, it's fantastic. You know, it's great. We always keep saying about finding different audiences, so it's been great being invited on with you guys. You know, we're talking to different people again, so we'll keep talking as long as people want to listen.
And I think that we'll always talk, but the key point of ours is if we talk to, you know, or not we, if the schools talk to 10, 11, 12, up to 15-year-olds now, in 10 years' time, they'll be the teachers of the future. They'll be the business people of the future. They'll be they'll be the people that are entering society, and they will expect their workplaces, their colleagues to deal with that. And you can see how quickly, if the younger generation expect the older generation.
I think we lost Tim, haven't we? No.
Oh, I'm hearing Tim.
Carry on, Tim.
I didn't. That's my fault. I didn't hear Tim.
Sorry, mate. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if the younger generation now, you know, the 10 to 16-year-olds have suicide prevention training, and that becomes just the norm for them. When in 10 years' time, when you know they're the young teachers, they're the young business people and stuff, they will expect their workplaces and their colleagues to deal with that, and they will almost drag the older generations, us lot, all of us, whether you're in your 30s or 50s, into their world and say, you know, they've done it with the kind of diversity and inclusion. You know, they've made things that we used to say totally unacceptable now, and that will just be a societal change. So if we can change our young people, they're incredibly powerful, and that will change society, and it won't take long, but it's just an investment. You know, wait for 10 years and society will have changed if we get into the curriculum now.
Yeah.
I mean, on that, boys, as well, you know, you're doing so much future prevention. You know, and we're trying to be proactive in this instance as well. And he's doing great work. I mean, he's worked with Prioritise and Hopeline UK, don't he, at the moment? Is that the main sort of focus that for anyone here and now that are struggling? Are they the people you would go through? If he's worked with any other charities or any other organisations, I know you've got Better Help and, you know, you've got Mind and things like that in the mental health sector. I just want to know how you build that relationship and who you guys go to, and for anyone may struggle, who the best people to speak to would be if you haven't got the avenues that you have got.
Well, the reason we got involved with Papyrus started with me, and that was when after we lost Sophie, we were looking for a suicide prevention charity to support at her funeral. And if you Google suicide prevention charities, you get Mind comes up and Samaritans, which are great. You know, they do great work. But I'm actually a trustee of a small environmental charity in the Lake District. And my inclination is never to support big charities because they kind of look after themselves. And so I contacted a friend and asked her, out of all the non-big charities, and she pointed me at Papyrus. And they're fantastic. I mean, they are amazing people, because as well as running Helpline 24/7, they run loads and loads of training, go out and teach people about suicide prevention, suicide awareness, and suicide first aid. And also they do a lot of work with the decision makers. So they spend Jed, the chief exec, spends a lot of time at Westminster. So they do some fantastic work. And it was easy when we got together. Mike had come across Papyrus already. It was very easy just to say, right, well, the money we're going to raise some money and we're going to give it to these people because they save lives. It was really quite a simple thing. What's happened over the Three Dads project, if that's the right word, journey, I don't know, what is it? Three Dads, what are we doing? I'm not sure what we're doing. We make it up as we go along. We've met loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of other charities and organisations along the way, some big, some small, all trying to save lives. And there are so many charities out there that are trying to do some fantastic stuff. I don't know if you saw last week, there was a project run called, fortnight thing called Baton of Hope, where there was a physical baton, big metal thing made by the King's jewellers, carried around 12 cities of the UK, mainly by suicide bereaved people.
How would you know? You didn't carry it, did you?
Yeah, I'll let you do it. Bloody hell, it's too heavy.
It's heavy.
Other people do that.
Tim, what did you say to me? You said I've got sun cream on my hands. I can't hold it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Too right. It's too heavy for me.
Yeah, but it weighed a ton. It was it's really a magnificent thing. It really is.
But it brought so many people together and so many charities together. There are. We do focus on Papyrus because we've got to focus on something, and these people save lives, so we'll keep doing it. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean we're not supporting others. As Tim talked about earlier on, one of the when we all three of us went and watched the suicide prevention lessons being taught, that was by a Cumbrian charity called Every Life Matters, who do magnificent work across Cumbria, absolutely phenomenal work. But we're all different. We're all involved with different charities along the way, because whether we like it or not, we're all in this together, and we've got to keep shouting about it.
And we do try and support other people's ventures as well, walks and things like that. We always turn up if we can, as individuals as well as all three of us.
And that's what we said this year, wasn't it? We would support, rather than do another walk this year, we did concentrate on engaging with government and supporting other people. And I think we're all talking at various Samaritans events, other charities. There's one round here, Norfolk Community Foundation, that raises money for over 2,000 charities. So we try and help out locally to other charities as well. If we can, if we can support them in them raising money, then that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, if you guys are ever in the northeast, as in anywhere, probably Durham upwards, we would always be keen to come along.
Ooh, okay.
Well, funny you should mention that.
How good are you at walking?
Hang on. Oh look.
Yeah. I'll come along. It's good fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've not drawn the line yet, but we could make it go through Durham, can't we?
To be fair, we love anything like that, to be honest, and it's good just to get out and actually get some fresh air and exercise and talk. Exactly.
What walking and talking, it's a huge thing. I mean, everyone asks sort of how did me, Andy, and Tim get on during these walks. The truth is, we hardly talk to each other. Yeah, we hardly talk to each other because we're talking to someone else. We didn't tend to sort of walk with three of us talking to one person. That person would go around each of us individually. That was powerful as well, because they got, all different aspects of this and that. It was, really powerful. But, if we will walk again next year. And,
He said it.
Well,
he said it now, hasn't he?
Well, when you do, if there's an invite, we would absolutely love to come.
You don't need an invite. No, you don't need an invite. There'll be a tracker and you just turn up. There's no invites needed. You know,
Bring
this
pork pies.
You know,
I'll be
people
there.
used to wait for us on the way. You know, and that's what it's about. You know, come along. There's no invites.
Yeah,
or an open invite, should I say?
Yeah, and it was
open.
Yeah, I've got to say, it was one of the most privileged things I think I've ever done in my life. Those 2 walks, not because of these 2 muppets, but because of the people that we met along the way. But honestly, that sense of just hope and love and care, it's just an unbelievable thing to be able to experience. And to experience it day after day after day after day was really mind-boggling.
And to eat that many pork pies was
lots of pork pies.
Yeah. Didn't get energy bars. We got pork pies.
To be fair, you had me at pork pies. I'm just coming on the walk for the pies.
And me.
We couldn't eat them fast enough.
Yeah. And obviously, we'd like you all to look out for. We've got a book coming out next year. And we hope it carries a very important message. You'll obviously tell our story of our first walk, coming together, you know, the girls and us, but it's very much, we want it to be a story of hope as well, you know, to stop people taking their own lives, hopefully reaching out, but also for families and people affected afterwards. You know, life's not always great for us, but we're all here now. You know, we get up every morning and we've got things to do. You know, we've got a point to live, you know, and that's hugely important going on, because each one of us has got other people that rely on us, people who love us, you know, and if people can take something from that book, it'll be a great thing.
Yeah, well, when it comes out, just give us a shout. We can either have you guys back on and we can talk all about the book, or we can just plug it all on our social medias and stuff. More than happy. And obviously we would buy the book. More than happy to. Obviously, that goes without saying. That's a given. We would buy the book. Do love a.
You can pre-order it on Amazon, amazingly enough.
Yeah, can we? Well, I will pre-order.
Who knew?
Yeah.
That's another part of the surreal world that the 3 of us have landed in. You know,
you're now authors. Yeah.
Us 3.
But we're writers. We're not authors yet. Yeah.
You're writers, not authors yet. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Good point.
I suppose that the last sort of section that I would really like to talk about is around how you guys today look after your mental health. So as 3 men, where you are today in your life, how are you today looking after your mental health? Obviously, you do all of this amazing work, but your partner, like your family life, how are you balancing all of that and finding a bit of a happy place? Because it's hard enough being a bloke anyway, but never mind being a bloke who's probably gone through some of the things you guys have gone through. So how are you doing that?
Who's answering that one first then?
That's a big question, I know.
It is.
It's hard. It's hard. It's really, really hard. I'm working full time. I've got other kids, my wife, and it's hard to try and balance it all. You know, I've just seen my wife walk out with our little one take the dog for a walk, and I'm missing out on that because I'm with you Muppets, but I can cope with that for a night. but no, it is a balancing act, and sometimes I think the problem we've got is saying no to things, or I've definitely got. You know, I think we get inundated with requests for stuff, and we need to pull back. We've got, you know, Mike's mentioned the book. We've got a deadline to get the next bit of the book in, which is more time away, and it kind of takes over a little bit, and we've got to be careful that it doesn't take over too much. But there is a good point why we're doing this, as we've all alluded to, you know, especially this year, and especially with all the engagement with government. That is so important, because that for me personally really helps with my mental health, because it feels I'm doing something really positive, not just for me, but for society. And that giving to society is a really, really good thing for me personally.
Yeah, as you alluded to before as well, Lewis, you know, helping people is a powerful thing, and it is one of those. You know, it's a good feel good. It's a feel good thing. helping people, believe it or not. But it is a struggle sometimes. I'll openly admit I go up and down all the time. But but I try to do everything positive. I've got a plan for life. I've just we've just bought a house in Anglesey. The reason is because of the fresh air, the sea. It is a beautiful place, but also it's a sanctuary. I'm hoping for my family and friends to come out here and visit. So I've had all that to plan. All the three dad stuff, as Tim said, it's a positive. Instead of it doesn't allow me time to sit there with my head in my hands. That could very easily happen. I have to get up. I have to do something. And I'm probably the most disorganized out of the three of these lot. But
you are.
There's no probably, mate. There's no probably.
but I'm still with it. And sort of, what do? I try and get out and walk. I walk the dog. I can swim here. I can, I go to the gym. And it's about not sitting on your arse sometimes. It's a very easy thing to do. Even if you're getting up and going for a half an hour walk, sort of around the block a few times, it's important stuff. I just encourage people to try.
I think it's a really good question you asked, Lewis, at the end about mental health, because it's not something that people normally ask. However, the situation that we've thrown ourselves into, by being so open about our emotions and our experiences, it's really interesting how the number of people who come up to you and say, "How are you? No, how are you? How are you doing?" and mean it, really mean it, which is really reassuring, because it's kind of nice to know that people actually care about us. And in many cases, it'll be people that you don't know. We do get recognised, which is a bit weird. And those people will ask how we're doing, and really mean it. But it's a lesson, I think, for all of us to ask our family and friends, how are you? And ask them twice, how are you? How are you doing? How are you really doing? Because it's good to give people a chance to tell you how they're actually doing. With our girls, with Sophie, I spoke to her on the afternoon that she took her own life, and she was taking the mickey out of me because I pocket dialed her. But I never even thought to ask her how she was doing that day. I just didn't. So it's a lesson for us all to ask that. But in terms of what I'm doing, bloody hell, I can't stand still. My wife and I were just looking at our diaries, trying to work out when we get to see each other again. I'm not like Tim. I don't work 5 days a week. I do it at the moment. I'm doing a two day a week seasonal job, hiring people's bikes, people bike. But it's great. I just it's nice to be out and do that. And I've got, other than the Papyrus, I'm involved in other charities that are doing all kinds of different stuff, some environmental stuff, and plenty of friends to go out for a walk with, funnily enough. And so getting out and about, living in this part of the world, is great to be outside. So I'll keep doing it.
I suppose one other sort of question I have around that sort of stuff, and it's mainly because we've talked a lot on our podcast around how diet is so positive for your mental health and cutting out alcohol. Now, I don't expect you guys to. I know I did see the wine before. There's the beer. Literally my type of guys, to be fair. But have you found coming out or trying to move forward with life and be here and now and live in the present? Have you found anything like diet or alcohol have affected anything? Have you found yourself having to cut out in moments of, actually, if I drink too much, I'll be lower, or yeah?
I mean, I have a tendency to binge drink. I'm far better if I don't have a drink. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm a horrible person, but I'm talking about the day afterwards. I'm far more active. Diet-wise, before I lost Beth, I used to watch my diet. You know, I used to train properly and everything. I'm afraid my diet's gone out the window a bit. I'll eat absolutely anything at the moment. You know, but
just preparing for winter. That's all.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but
hibernation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hibernation.
Yeah, but to be perfectly honest, I'm very well aware that if I do look after my diet and drink less, control it a little bit, I do feel a lot better. I feel a lot healthier, a lot sharper, and probably a lot happier. You know, so but sometimes I suppose it is a coping mechanism now and again to, you know, drink a little bit too much. So there you go. Honest answer.
Yeah, I think when Em died in lockdown and stuff, it was really weird. I kind of totally went off alcohol, and I don't know. I think because I thought if I drink, I won't stop, and I didn't want to put that pain away. I don't know. I didn't want to put the pain away, and so I didn't kind of turn to it. And I know now I clearly have a beer or two, but it's not. I do it. There's a load of mates in our village who have always gone out on a Thursday night. We're all in our 50s something. The next group down to the 40 somethings. The next group down to the 30 somethings. And we just go out and we have a couple of beers on a Thursday night, 2 or 3 beers on a Thursday night. And so, you know, my group are all in our 50s. We got one guy who was a firefighter who had stage 4 throat cancer at one stage, literally given 3 weeks to live, and somehow he lived. We've got other guys who had other types of cancer. You know, one of the dads, he had after Em died, he wasn't there for a couple of weeks. We were allowed to go to the pub during the lockdown at one point, and he wasn't there. And it's because he had a tumour pulled out down his nose, a brain tumour pulled out down his nose. And he didn't think that was bad enough. He didn't want to open up because he thought, I've been through worse losing my daughter than him having the brain tumour pulled out of his nose, bless him. But there's a group of us that kind of go regularly. And it's a bit like this, really. We just talk about rubbish, have a couple of beers. And so kind of going back to kind of drinking, I tend to do it with friends, you know, than just sitting on my own and drinking.
Well, these two know I was brought up in a pub. Which is probably not a good place to start, is it? Actually, I'll tell you the one thing I'm missing tonight. At the parish council, they're having a meeting, and one of the topics is buying the pub. So I'm foregoing being in that meeting tonight to do this.
Ooh. And
so I'll be against you. I hate to say.
And we have a beer named after us.
Oh, we do have a beer named after us. Yes.
Wow.
Walking on beer.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a friend of mine runs a pub up the road, and he's a nutter, complete nutter. And he decided that he wanted to do. It's actually where Gregor, our son, worked there when he was at school and university. And obviously Anton was very aware of everything that's happened with us. And I think it was around about Christmas time. He said, "I've got an idea. I'll go to the local breweries and get them all to make the Three Dads Walking beer, and we'll charge a premium on it, and we'll raise money for Papyrus."
Oh, amazing!
Well, interesting enough, Papyrus, the guys at Papyrus went, "That's a fantastic idea, but we can't support it because they can't be seen to supporting things like alcohol, or betting, or tobacco, or that kind of thing." So it's like, so they can't actually be seen to be sort of supporting it vocally, as it were, or officially. But Anton's just gone ahead, and so there's this beer that's in.
Does it taste nice?
It's fantastic. It is fantastic.
Yeah, Mike and I haven't had any yet.
No, you haven't. You haven't. It's really good, and it's selling like mad. And as well as selling it to Anton's pub, it's been sold to about another dozen pubs, South Lakes.
They've got a brilliant cartoon picture, haven't they, on the beer mat that goes with it, and they've got the profiles just right, haven't they, Andy? We got it.
My sylph-like figure, is that what you're trying to say, Mike?
Yes.
But
so I can't claim to manage my alcohol intake or food. I have my moments. I think about it. The one thing that is really important for me is exercise. What are you laughing at?
You think about it for a second, don't you? It comes in and then it's gone. Yeah.
And then just swallows it down.
Oh yeah.
All right.
We had on the last walk, didn't there? Andy's cutting down. Wow. Oh. Andy's cutting down. Yeah, there he is. With the full
Fiona. Andy did cut down.
Yeah,
he cut down loads. It was amazing how much he cut down.
Well, thank you.
His willpower was, it was zen-like.
Right, really as I was saying, what I do try and do is exercise, and I do go out for a run. I run very, very slowly nowadays, but I still go out and do it. But walking, funnily enough, is an incredibly powerful thing. You know, we just take the opportunity to get out and walk, and whether it's with friends or with Fee, my wife, or just by myself, I'll just get out and do it. So that is a really powerful thing for me, just to keep active in the outdoors.
Yeah, me too. Ethan, we're going to move to your little section, and then we will be there or thereabouts, I think. So Ethan has a section every week. He asks our guests. So we're going to get 3 answers today, which is amazing. I'm not going to say any more, so we'll let you go first. Go on, Ethan.
Yeah, so basically, lads, this is my little section that Lewis has started telling every guest about before I get a chance to say a word. So I'm glad
I tried not to there. I did try not to there.
He said what it was, what he wanted from the guest, and then he said, so Ethan, tell the guests what you would like them to say. So, so chaps, obviously, we've discussed your journey so far, and you've got a long way to go. Obviously, you're making great progress. For anyone who's out there, whether they've been in your situation, you know, or just everyday man or everyday woman, what we would like to get off you is either a book, a podcast, or even a TV show which has sort of helped you or benefited you, whether it was when you were younger, today, you know, when you were going through your struggles, anything like that our guests may find interesting. If you could, we could start with anyone, or Andy, do you want to start first?
You know, the first thing that came to my mind is a book called The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters, Dr. Steve Peters.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And he was the man who worked alongside the British cycling team in the just after the turn of the century. And I read that when it first came out. I can't remember, a long time ago. And I just found that was a really fascinating book. The idea that you live with your inner chimp, that, you know, here we are human beings, but we're only a couple of million years in existence. And not even that, are we? We're 200,000 years old. And what we are actually are primates. And the thing that drives you most of the time, without you knowing it, is your inner chimp. And it's actually the idea that that's all right, because that's what we are. We're basically chimps at heart. And the bit we can control, it gives you some tips and techniques to understand when it's coming, to allow it to happen, I suppose, and to deal with it. No, Chimp Paradox is what I wrote down.
Fantastic. It's a great start. What about you, Tim? What are you saying?
Yeah, so when M died and it just didn't know which way to go, you know, how to survive at all, there was I'd seen a talk, and it's online, it's on YouTube, and he was written a book. It's a guy called Admiral William McRaven. He's a US Navy 4-star admiral, special forces, ex-SEAL, bit of a hard nut. And he talks, it's a bit of a kind of leadershipy speech, and I'd seen this before M died, and I couldn't remember all of it, but when M died, he talks about how he gets through really, really hard times in his life. And the thing that came back to me as soon as M died, it's like I didn't know which way to go, was make your bed. And it was like, what the hell is that about? Right, make your bed. And basically what he said, it doesn't matter however bad your life has got, if you get up in the morning and you make your bed and you do nothing else that day, when you go to bed that evening, you'll look at your bed and you'll go, I made that, at least I did one thing, you know, positive that day. And without a word of a lie, when M died, and, you know, we came back home on that Sunday, we all went to sleep. That following the Monday morning, got up, I just didn't know how to breathe, as Andy said before. didn't know how to just work, and I just thought, I've got to make my bed. I've got to make my bed, because if I make my bed, then I've done something positive at the start of that day. And that's pretty much how I got through the day. Made my bed, made the kids' beds and stuff, and then at least I knew when we all went to bed that night that the beds, I'd done something positive. So yeah, Admiral William McRaven. I haven't read his book, but he has put it into a book. But it's just Google him on YouTube or whatever is there.
Brilliant. No, that's brilliant. Two great additions there. And it's a really motivational story. I know it's something that myself and Luce have spoke about in the past, and little wins, like that's, if you get 2 or 3 little wins in the day, all of a sudden you've got a big win, so they all add up, and it's fantastic. I mean, Mike, you've had 2 quality books there, Mike. What are you going to end us with?
I end with a book called The Map of Heaven by Dr. Eben Alexander. As soon as I lost Beth, it was like, where's she gone? What's happened? Is that it? If you die, you're gone. Or is there something more? Now, I have no religious leanings, or didn't before I lost Beth. And I don't particularly now, as in sort of different religions and things like that. They're more like football teams. But this book tells the story of basically a brain surgeon who contracted a meningitis, and basically it nearly killed him. But it's his journey, and he talks now. He's written many books, but he talks about his life when he nearly died, and they call NDEs, near-death experiences. And the point is, basically, to cut the story short, he basically went to a place that was beautiful, full of love, and basically he was meant to be there. So, cut a long story short, I read this book, and obviously it was in a horrible, horrible place. But then I started researching more about NDEs and what happens when you die. And it all sounds a bit out there. I absolutely get it. But my point is, a lot of these stories and everything, they overlap into religion. Sometimes you see another being, you get a feeling, a beautiful place. I've even spoken to people who've had these NDEs, and I could have told you what they were going to tell me before they told me. But the point of this is, and I spoke to many people when we were walking as well, who asked me the question, and I don't push this subject. And do I believe? I don't know. But there's so much proof out there that there is a possibility, there is something after this death, another dimension. So will I see Beth again? I might see Beth again. And as I always say, that makes these two laugh. If I ever see her again, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to kick her up the arse. But to see her again and to think there is hope that I could see her again, and even the rest of your family could be together, it just gives people something else, another little bit of hope in the whole puzzle. So it's a bit out there, but that's what it is. The Map of Heaven by Dr. Eben Alexander.
Fantastic. I appreciate you guys sharing with us. Thank you.
All, didn't it? Yeah, that stunned you all.
Honestly, I've definitely just added it to my Amazon basket there as you were talking.
So what you got was sport from me. You got military from the military man. And God knows what you got from the firefighter.
I was a bit of a hippie once as well, so maybe
when you had hair.
When I had hair, yes.
Fantastic. That's great, Mike.
Yeah, well, gents, that does wrap us up tonight. What I will say is, again, you were even more incredible. Your stories were even more incredible. Your wisdom was even more amazing than I honestly, genuinely feel. I feel very emotional after this one. And I didn't know how I was going to feel. And there was times when you were all talking that I felt like I didn't really know how to ask a question from there, because I felt so moved by what you were saying. So thank you so much for sharing. again, I can only echo what we've said throughout. You are all amazing for the things you now do, and you may not think it's brave, but it's certainly brave to almost put your feelings to one side to help others, and really try and allow people to live, and parents to live a better life without the fear, hopefully, that their child might do this through some of the work you're doing with education. So yeah, incredible work, and we will always be a huge fan and a supporter. And if there's any way we as a podcast, or even just a group of men, or even just a group of humans can help and get involved, we would be more than happy to, because we think you're a huge credit to everything that you're doing, and even a bigger credit to all of your daughters for the amazing things that you continue to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be with you.
Been a pleasure being here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, boys. And and I was going to say, Andy, enjoy your anniversary. Well, what's left of it, mate? You're going to go finish in the doghouse, aren't you?
I could call Fiona in, really, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Give you telling off. Because she can do that.
Yeah, very true.
She could have watched the whole film on Netflix.
That's it, yeah. She can, yeah. That's Netflix and chill to another way, that, isn't it? They get to go and chill, and you sit and talk to your mates. But all good.
There's an idea.
No, but brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you, fellas.
Well, thank you very much, all listeners, for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next one.
Let's go. Time to grind, get inside your mind. Yeah, we working overtime. That's the only way to climb. We gon' make it in our prime. Signing on the dotted line, cashing checks left and right. That's the way I'm living life.